like, well, hey, maybe I'll take one of those guys that doesn't have a degree. And then it changed how they did their process. A funny story with Boeing did a massive hiring the first time they worked with LaunchCode. So they took 20 people at one time, which has never happened before. They've still broken the record at one time. But the HR manager had people applying to Boeing through their regular system, and it kept on getting spit out, because they had this automated system that if you didn't have a computer science degree when you were applying for certain jobs, you just didn't even get through the system. And it took her months just to get Boeing to reconstruct their HR hiring process, just to allow for people to get in so they can actually have their information as human beings, to then usher them into the process. And so
it wasn't based on skills, it was based on the degree.
Yeah, I mean, both and probably,
Yeah.
and it's hard to assess for skills when you look at a resume. I can tell you all kinds of things that I can do on a resume, right? But you have no idea what those, if I can actually do them until you talk to me. Well, people weren't even getting in the door to get talked to. So those are just some ways that companies actually bent their whole process to work with LaunchCode.
Great. And Brandon, maybe you can touch a little bit on, you have an 18-month program, you also have these Catalyst shorter programs, but what are you seeing afterwards? I know that some of your male youth have been offered big-time jobs, but they go off and start their own companies because they have the skills, or they don't want to work, they want to continue school. So what's like the pipeline after you, before Crystal's program?
Sure.
What is between? Yeah,
and so our eldest student, eldest alum now is probably about 20 years old. So, they're fairly young still, but the great news is, with all the students in our intensive that we've served, and we've served now, I guess, over 55, or almost exactly 55, I guess. So all the young men who've been of age to graduate high school have graduated. Of all the young men we've been able to track, particularly as we came in with our staff regime, it turns out 100% of those young men also did enroll in post-secondary education. And then to a person, they actually either studying some element of kind of our three-legged stool, technology, creation, entrepreneurship, leadership. So either entrepreneurship or business, right, or computer science or both. We honestly don't care if they do any of those, but
right.
It's just something that they know. They get exposure, so they say, I know I can do it. I've built something, so it's not that, it doesn't seem that far off anymore, so we can do it. But also, one thing we're paying a lot of attention to is just how do we put our young people to work right now? So even as young as 15, 16 years old, the kind of longer game within the next several months to a year is to incubate them, to support them to continue to develop their own projects, because they have some fantastic ones. And just real quickly, just to rattle off, one, to help connect formerly incarcerated individuals with employers willing to hire formerly incarcerated individuals. He calls it hire. He's already
LinkedIn for the linked out.
Exactly. There you go. Another, a young man kind of just seeking to build a crowdfunding platform just for underinsured and uninsured individuals to pay for larger procedures, right? And then finally, just a kid who loves cars built a muscle car, search app, which could really take off now that the Cuban embargo has been lifted and there's all those cars. So we've been trying to get in his ear, but we're trying to get them to think about their own projects, but also we're training them as educators to be able to educate some of the younger students. So when people say, well, can you work with our 5th graders or 6th graders, we're kind of tapped capacity-wise. So we actually partnered with East Oakland Youth Development Center and had them train our young people as teachers and curriculum designers and instructional designers, so we can deploy them and pay them to go do the work.
So the 15-year-olds are teaching the 5th graders.
Exactly. So.
Very cool. Martin, Crystal, anything? Martin, Crystal, anything else to add about the pipeline or where people are coming from before they get to you? Maybe there's this gap between once they go through Brandon's program, maybe they don't need to go to your program, but where are you seeing people coming from?
Oh man, so LaunchCode is pretty agnostic in who they target as an organization. So we have people coming from all over, really. People who have started computer science degree programs and had to leave it for whatever reason. People who have gotten computer science degrees 20 years ago and need to, reskill. people who are just really, really interested and always had an interest in it, but they were afraid to pursue it, and so they're coming to LaunchCode now. A lot of women who started degrees in computer science and said, forget this, I'm over it, this is gross, and dropped all those programs and did something else, and they're circling back. People who are graduated from college and they're in their career and they're like, this is not working, and I need something that's going to give me some more mobility and the ability to work in different sectors and really make an impact in a broader way. So people who are still in college who just want to get a network before they leave the university or to get a job. There's a lot of students who get computer science degrees, but really they don't get the job training, right? They don't get they apply for jobs. It's like, well, 3 to 5 years of experience. It's like, well, I just graduated. How am I going to get that? And so there's some college students that are using LaunchCode as an opportunity to get in the door with people and learn on the job so they can feel more comfortable pursuing the jobs they want to, even after they spend a few years in that placement.
Great.
So there's all
Diverse,
all different types of backgrounds.
We have 3.5 minutes, so we'll take some questions if anyone has them. And I'm going to ask one question as we get people to stand at the mics. But what can everyone in the room do in the next week, month, year, changing our own preconceived conceptions, culture, approach? If you're private sector and you're in a company that does that recruiting internally, or if you're in a nonprofit, how do we all change our hiring, and I know you guys have a lot to say about if you're in philanthropy, any kind of organization, what do we do to make the shift that needs to happen?
Oh, I have so many things to say. I think the biggest thing, especially like running an organization, is companies love to help the way they want to help. And sometimes I don't even need your money, I need your expertise. I need someone who can come in and help me with marketing, And so I think if you really want to be stewards of service in your community and you really want to be engaged in these nonprofits and the work that we're doing with people learning how to code, don't come to us with ideas of what you want to do. Come to us and say, what do you need help with, and who can I mobilize in my entire company? Sometimes it's not your IT people. It's your marketing people, it's your communications people, it's your operations people. So be open to just helping the way that organization needs you to help. So I think that's the main thing. And then also, education. Don't tell your kids what they can't do. Let them explore things. Be advocates for your kids and other people's kids in our school systems. I think it's ridiculous that we don't have computer science programs as a requirement in our schools, and that's our responsibility to mobilize our local and state governments and school districts to do that. It's our job to do it. Don't put it on teachers. Don't put it on the districts to even do that. It's our job to push that. And that's advocating for your kids and your grandkids and the kids that are the kids with them.
And I would just say, I think there are a ton of things, but one thing is just we can all just take inventory of the assumptions that we make and test them. We have to do it every day in our work, particularly, again, if we're engineering, we always have to test and challenge our assumptions and utilize an assets-based lens to do so. The most, forceful example I can provide is there's a time in the last couple of years where on Instagram and Twitter, this concept of quote unquote on fleek came out, this term kind of invented by this teenage girl who was talking about her eyebrows, but people took it and ran with it and turned it into marketing campaigns, IHOP, Burger King, all these companies. So they took, the content she generated, right, and people would look at her possibly in this deficit-based manner, and then turned it into widespread marketing campaign. So she was clearly a very powerful marketer, a marketing mind, but people would make assumptions about what she was capable of doing and yet take the content. So if we test those assumptions and take inventory, we'd say, you know what? Clearly there's something to this. We need someone like her, but she's going to look very different from a bunch of the people we have. So.
Good, great. Okay, really quick question.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for your comments. Since before the turn of the century, actually for a full generation now, technology companies have been claiming they can't find enough Americans, enough employees, and they have to use the H-1B visa. Can your techniques, do you think, get our young people ready so that we could fill all those jobs and we don't even need that H-1B visa?
Crystal, you start.
Well, yeah, so the tech hire grant that, that came through last year, it does just that. It's discouraging the H-1B visas needed, and they actually use that money that was generated from those to fund these programs to retrain the American workforce. So I think it's definitely something that is possible, and it's happening. We're doing it right now, along with many other organizations. So that's why I reemphasize that the education piece, it has to start at that point in the pipeline.
Yeah,
but I think it's
you're filling
definitely
the gap. Brandon, anything to
Yeah.
say about that?
And we absolutely believe our organization, our network of organizations can take that pipeline from kind of old home to new construction. The big question is, what will be the vessel waiting under the faucet to collect it? And you know, if we already know that at the kind of the largest companies, disproportionately, particularly on the engineering side, the people are being hired, actually, fewer people are being hired proportionally with respect to these engineering jobs at these companies, the ones you can name that instantly pop into your head, relative to the people leaving programs from universities and respected universities in the country. So there's an issue there, so we can keep pumping out the talent or training people, but they've got to land somewhere, otherwise they'll, to keep the analogy going, go down the drain. So.
Love that. Okay, super quick, 10 seconds.
Hi, my name's Charlie. I founded a small civic tech company, so I'm not coming from the perspective of a big business who has a lot of resources, but from a smaller company, I still try to be as inclusive as I can in terms of the people I work with, but it presents a separate set of challenges that I was hoping you might be able to speak to. So one is, I don't have the time and resources to think about this as much as I would like to and necessarily go after, you know, if I show up to the Ruby meetup in Albuquerque, it is going to be mostly white people, and so I have to make a little bit more of an effort to maybe find the person of color who would fit a certain skill set. So for a smaller company, how do you address those pipeline challenges? Other questions, I think there's a lot of momentum for these entry-level positions where you can now find qualified people, but still at the senior level there seems to be less diversity available, and I wonder if that's something you've thought about. And last, if you're trying to put together a board, one of the big challenges is you're looking for people with influence and power, and most of those people are older white men, and that's a really difficult thing to deal with. So those are all challenges, and I wonder how the pipeline efforts affect those things.
Super fast, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Well, we're fortunate to have founders who are startup founders as well. The best thing is for founders of smaller startups, right, is I think to be extremely transparent and clear about the skills needed, and then just test for them or ask folks in a non-traditional place to actually exhibit those or demonstrate those skills for you, right? So you, like you said, you don't have a lot of money to do like the recruiting and the massaging, but you can say this is exactly what I need, and if you can do it, I'll hire you. And then take that to a local community college or an alternative, program, a non-CS-based program. And if people can do it, at least we know as startups that they will make the hire because you don't have enough time to be inefficient, right, in that regard. So.
I want to sort of speak to the ceiling thing. It's very, very real, and I think it's programs like CoderGirl and LaunchCode that really just build the confidence. Like, if I hadn't had the network that I had when I started off in tech, I would not be sitting here and talking to you. It was the people in my network that said, no, stop saying you can't do this, stop saying you're not qualified for these things. And so that's something I'm doing, and so I'm sort of building this army of people who are confident in themselves, and so the idea is that they go to these other meetups and these other happenings in the city, and they push back on these executives and these CEOs and these conversations about race and diversity in the workplace and say, well, you're really good at hiring us, but you're not good at promoting us, and so what are you going to do about it? I'm standing right here, and I'm qualified for that job. And I've shown, I have a track record of being able to learn on the job and get to a place that I need to get, so why don't you think I couldn't do that moving up the ranks in an organization? So that's kind of the way I'm approaching it, just be ballsy or over easy, and just do some stuff and say I can do it. And if someone says no, you're like, all right, well, moving to the next one. That's kind of the approach that I've taken.
Good, let's be ballsy all day. Thank you,
over-
everybody.
And over easy.
Okay, we're off.
Thank you.